I bought the house and paid every bill, yet my parents tried giving my room to my brother and his pregnant wife until I ended things they never expected. I'm a 26-year-old male, and for the last year or so, I've been living with my parents in the city. It sounds pretty basic, right? But it's not what you think. This wasn't some move back home because I can't afford rent situation. I'm actually the one who bought the house. I pay the entire mortgage, cover all the groceries, bills, everything. My parents, they don't pay a dime. To give you some background, my parents, Liz, a 52-year-old female, and Tom, a 55-year-old male, are both retired teachers. They'd been living out in the country for years, but after they stopped working, they decided they wanted to move to the city. They were bored with the quiet life and wanted to be closer to more exciting stuff, or at least that's what they said. I thought, why not? I'm making good money as a software engineer, and the city has better job opportunities anyway. Plus, I figured I'd help them out since they've done a lot for me growing up. You know, normal family stuff. So we moved into this nice 3-bedroom house in the city. I'm not talking mansion level or anything, but it's definitely a nice place. 3 bedrooms, a little backyard, and a big enough living room for everyone to hang out. Since I'm the one paying the mortgage, I made sure to claim the master bedroom. It's got a walk-in closet and its own bathroom, which is clutch because honestly, sharing a bathroom with anyone else? No thank you. The second bedroom is my home office since I work from home about 80% of the time. I set it up just the way I wanted. Dual monitors, a comfortable chair, the whole deal. I figured the third bedroom would stay as a guest room for when family visited or whatever. Simple enough, right? At first, everything was fine. My parents were just happy to be in the city, and we all settled into a pretty comfortable routine. They did their thing, gardening, watching TV, whatever retirees do, and I worked my job, paid the bills, and took care of the house. I didn't mind paying for everything. I make 6 figures, and it's not like they have much income coming in besides their pensions. Plus, it's family. You don't charge family rent, right? Then came the turning point. And let me tell you, it all happened faster than I could have imagined. One day, my mom dropped this casual comment at breakfast like it was no big deal. She said, "You know, your brother Jake and Emma are thinking about moving to the city. They're not doing so well back in the old town, and Emma's pregnant, so they could really use the help." At first, I didn't think much of it. Jake, a 28-year-old male, and Emma, a 26-year-old female, had always been the kind of couple who jumped from one bad situation to another. They weren't exactly struggling, but they weren't thriving either. Plus, Emma being pregnant threw a whole new layer into the mix. I thought, okay, maybe they'll move to the city and get a small apartment or something. But no, my mom had different plans. A few days later, she sat me down and, with this super innocent tone, said, "We've invited Jake and Emma to come stay with us. It'll just be for a little while until they get back on their feet." Now, this is the part where I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I just kind of nodded along, figuring, okay, whatever. They'll stay for a bit and then find their own place. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the chaos. My parents didn't exactly ask if I was cool with them moving in. They just told me after they'd already invited them. I was still processing the whole thing when Jake and Emma showed up at our doorstep. A week later, bags in hand, looking like they were moving in for the long haul. So, here's the deal. They move in, and right away, it's clear that they think they're staying indefinitely. I'm already feeling the stress build up because I'm the one paying for everything. Groceries, utilities, mortgage, you name it. And now I've got 2 more people to feed and take care of. No one even asked if I was okay with it. They just moved in like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my brother. He's family, after all. But Jake's not exactly the most responsible person in the world. He's the kind of guy who always finds himself in messy situations and then relies on other people to bail him out. And Emma, she's nice enough, but she's got this entitled attitude that just rubs me the wrong way, like she's pregnant. So she automatically deserves special treatment from everyone around her. But here's where things start getting really messed up. A couple of days after they moved in, Emma started making these little comments. You know, the type that seem harmless but are actually really annoying. She'd say things like, "This place is so big. It must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself." Or, "I can't wait until the baby's here. We're going to need a lot of space for all the baby stuff." I didn't think too much of it at first, but then came the kicker. One evening, after I had just finished a long day of work, Jake and Emma pulled me aside and said they wanted to talk. I thought, all right, maybe they're going to apologize for taking up space and eating all the food without offering to help. But nope. Instead, Emma, all casual, said, "So, we've been thinking it would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom." I just stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We need more space," Jake added, like it was obvious. The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom. Now keep in mind, I pay the entire mortgage. The house is in my name. I also pay for all the groceries, and I've been supporting the whole household without asking for anything in return. And here they were, asking me to give up my own bedroom. I was floored. I couldn't even respond right away. It was like the audacity just hit me all at once. Finally, I said, "Why don't you just take the spare room? It's plenty big, and it's already set up for guests." Emma wasn't having it. "But that room doesn't have a walk-in closet, and the baby's going to need space," she said. I stared at them for a few seconds, trying to stay calm. "I'm not giving up my room," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "You can have the spare room, or you can find somewhere else to stay." Jake looked a little shocked that I wasn't just caving in, but, "Emma?" She looked downright offended, and that's when I realized this wasn't going to end well. After that awkward conversation where Jake and Emma straight up asked me to give up my room, I thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how ridiculous they sounded and back off. I mean, who in their right mind asks the person paying the mortgage, buying the groceries and keeping the lights on to just give up their space like that? But nope, of course, that's not what happened. The next couple of days I started noticing these little things. For one, Jake and Emma were suddenly really comfortable. Too comfortable. They'd spread their stuff out all over the living room, had their shoes kicked off near the couch, and Emma was already talking about where she was going to put all the baby stuff, like the house was theirs or something. I wasn't saying anything yet, but it was building up inside me. That feeling that something was about to go down. So, one day, I had to go into the office for a few hours. Normally, I work from home, but sometimes I have meetings that I can't miss. Anyway, I get home around lunchtime to grab something to eat, and I notice something strange. As soon as I walk in, my stuff, my personal stuff, is in the hallway. My clothes are in a pile on the floor. My computer monitor is just sitting there, unplugged, like someone was in the middle of moving it. My heart's already starting to race because I know what this means, but I had to see it for myself. I walk to my room, and sure enough, there's Emma standing in the middle of it, packing up the last of my things. She doesn't even look surprised when I walk in. She just glances over at me like, "Oh, hey, I was just finishing up." I couldn't believe it. "What the hell are you doing?" I blurted out, probably louder than I meant to. She had the nerve to look all calm and collected, like this was no big deal. "Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon, and we need the space," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I could feel my blood boiling. My mom said? My mom, who doesn't pay a single cent toward the mortgage, thought it was okay to just hand over my room to Jake and Emma without even talking to me. I wasn't about to let this slide. "No," I said, stepping into the room. "You're not moving into my room. I already told you guys to take the guest room." Emma didn't like that. She crossed her arms and gave me this look like I was the one being unreasonable. "The guest room is too small for the baby, and there's no closet. We need more space," she said. I wasn't having it. "I don't care. You're not taking my room. I'm the one paying the mortgage. I'm the one who's been paying for everything in this house. And you and Jake aren't even contributing anything. If you need more space, you're welcome to find your own place." At this point, I was really angry, and I could tell Emma was getting upset too. But I didn't care. She didn't back down, though. "Your mom said it was fine," she repeated, like that was the final word. Now, here's where I lost it. I marched back out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom, who, by the way, wasn't even home at the time. The second she answered, I didn't even let her say hello. "Mom, did you tell Jake and Emma they could move into my room?" There was a long pause on the other end, like she didn't know what to say. Finally, she admitted, "Well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "I pay the mortgage. I pay for all the groceries. I pay the bills. And you think it's okay for Jake and Emma to just take over my room?" My mom tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal and that we're all family, but I was done listening. I'm not giving them my room, and if they don't move their stuff out, they're going to need to find another place to stay. By this point, Emma must have heard me because she came storming out of the room looking furious. "You're seriously going to throw us out with a baby on the way?" That's when Jake walked in. He must have heard the commotion from outside because he came in looking all pissed off too. "What's going on?" he demanded. So I laid it out for him. "What's going on is your wife thinks she can just take over my room without even asking. And I'm telling you both right now, it's not happening. You can either stay in the guest room or you can leave." Jake wasn't happy about that. He got all defensive. saying how they're family and how I should be willing to make sacrifices for them. But at this point, I was beyond reasoning. Sacrifices? I'm already paying for this entire house. What are you guys contributing, huh? Nothing. And now you think you can just walk in and take over? The yelling got pretty loud at that point, and I think it was clear that neither side was backing down. My mom tried calling me back, but I ignored her. I was too pissed off to deal with her excuses. Jake kept going on and on about how I wasn't being fair, how they had a baby on the way, and how family should stick together in tough times. But I'd had enough. I turned to both of them and said, "You've got until the end of the day to move your stuff out of my room. If you don't, I'll move it out for you." Emma stormed off, slamming the door behind her, and Jake just stood there, glaring at me like I was the bad guy. But I didn't care. I wasn't about to let them walk all over me in my own house, especially when I was the one paying for everything. For the rest of the day, I stayed in my office trying to cool down. I didn't want to deal with either of them. And I knew if I went back out there, it would just turn into another argument. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. They weren't going to take this lying down, and I had a feeling my mom would get involved again. But I wasn't about to back down either, not this time. After that blow-up with Jake and Emma, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally back off. I mean, I was crystal clear, my room wasn't up for grabs, and they could either stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to live. It seemed pretty simple to me, but of course, things didn't go that smoothly. The next day, I kept mostly to myself. I wasn't looking for more drama, and honestly, I was still fuming from how things had gone down. I spent most of my time working in the office, trying to pretend like everything was normal. But by the time dinner rolled around, I could feel the tension in the air. It was like everyone was avoiding each other, tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. I didn't mind the quiet. If Jake and Emma were finally going to stay in the guest room without causing more issues, I figured I could live with that. But then something happened that pushed me over the edge. That evening, I walked into the kitchen to grab some food. I had bought all the groceries like I always do, but when I opened the fridge, it was practically empty. I'm talking about food I had just bought 2 days ago. Gone. I checked the freezer. Same deal. I knew my parents didn't eat like that, and it wasn't me, obviously. So, who else could it be? Jake and Emma. They'd probably helped themselves to everything without even asking. I was already irritated, but I tried to brush it off, thinking, whatever, I'll just pick up more tomorrow. But it wasn't just the food. When I went to sit down at the table to eat, my mom came into the kitchen, not looking me in the eye. She quietly made plates for herself, my dad, Jake, and Emma. And then she didn't make one for me. At first, I thought she must have forgotten, so I just kind of waited. But she finished serving everyone and sat down. I was left standing there like an idiot, watching as they all started eating. I'm not going to lie, I felt the anger bubbling up again. It was like they were all punishing me for standing up for myself. I looked at my mom, trying to keep my cool. "You didn't make me a plate." She barely looked up. "You don't want to help the family. You don't eat with the family," she said as casually as if she was commenting on the weather. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me? I pay for everything here. The groceries, the mortgage, and now I'm being iced out?" She didn't even answer. My dad just kind of sighed and kept eating, like nothing was happening, which pissed me off even more. Jake and Emma were sitting there with this smug look on their faces, like they had won some kind of power play. Emma even had the nerve to smile at me when I walked by. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't about to be treated like some outsider in the house that I paid for. I slammed the fridge door shut and stormed out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I knew what I had to do next. I went straight to my room, grabbed my laptop, and started looking up eviction notices. I figured if they didn't want to treat me with respect, then they could find somewhere else to live. I mean, enough is enough, right? I'm not a free hotel service. Within an hour, I had the documents ready. I printed out 2 sets, one for Jake and Emma and one for my parents. It felt weird kicking out my own family, but at this point they had crossed the line. They'd been disrespecting me for weeks, acting like the house was theirs, and then freezing me out because I wouldn't cave to their ridiculous demands. I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. Once the notices were printed, I walked out to the living room where everyone was sitting, pretending like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. I just slapped the papers down in front of my parents, then handed another set to Jake and Emma. "What's this?" Jake asked, picking up the papers and scanning them. "You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage. "If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police." Jake's face went pale. He wasn't expecting this. Not at all. "You can't be serious," he said. "Oh, I'm serious," I replied. "I'm done with this. You've been freeloading here without contributing a thing. And now you think you can take over my house? No, not anymore. Jake stood up, glaring at me, but I didn't budge. I was taller than him, bigger than him, and I wasn't going to be intimidated by his little temper tantrum. We're family, he said through gritted teeth. You can't just throw us out. Yes, I can, I said, stepping closer. I'm the one who pays for this house, not you, not Emma, and not Mom and Dad. If you don't want to be respectful, you don't get to stay here. Emma, of course, started crying, as if that was going to change anything. I'm pregnant, and you're kicking us out. What kind of brother are you? I'm the brother who's been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me, I shot back. You have 24 hours. That's more than generous. Jake looked like he wanted to argue more, but I could see the realization starting to sink in. I wasn't bluffing. My mom, who had been sitting there quietly this whole time, finally spoke up. You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family. But I didn't care anymore. I've already done it, I said, pointing to the eviction notice in her hands. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else, too. If you're not gone by then, I'll be taking legal action. The room went dead quiet after that. My dad didn't say a word, just sat there staring at the table like he didn't know what to do. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about standing up for myself and not letting them walk all over me. After a few long minutes, I walked back to my room, leaving them to process everything. I locked my door, sat down at my desk, and took a deep breath. I'd just done something I never thought I'd have to do, kick out my own family. But you know what? It felt good. It felt right. I wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. The house was dead quiet for the rest of the night. No one came to my door. No one tried to argue with me. I think they all realized that I wasn't messing around anymore. If they didn't respect me, they didn't deserve to live here. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. After handing out those eviction notices, I figured the tension in the house would either explode or everyone would finally back off and take me seriously. Either way, I knew there was no going back. I'd drawn my line in the sand and I wasn't about to let anyone step over it again. But instead of the blow-up I was expecting, the house got quiet. Too quiet, honestly. The morning after, I woke up earlier than usual, just because I couldn't really sleep. I guess I was kind of waiting for something to happen, like maybe Jake would come banging on my door, demanding I change my mind, or maybe my parents would start pleading with me to reconsider. But none of that happened. When I finally walked into the kitchen to make breakfast, it was empty. No one was up yet. No Jake, no Emma, no parents. For a second, I thought maybe they had packed up in the middle of the night and left without saying anything. But I knew that was just wishful thinking. I made my coffee, sat down at the table, and waited. I wasn't in the mood to make small talk, and I wasn't in the mood to explain myself again. What I'd done was necessary. They'd pushed me too far, and there was no way I could keep living like that. They didn't respect me, and they sure as hell didn't respect the fact that I was paying for everything. All I wanted was some basic decency, and they couldn't even give me that. After a while, my mom came into the kitchen, her face looking like she'd barely slept. She didn't say anything at first, just grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. It was the first time we'd really been alone since I handed her the eviction notice. The awkward silence hung in the air for what felt like forever before she finally spoke up. "Honey," she started, her voice soft and tired. "I know things have gotten out of hand. I didn't say anything. I just stared at my coffee, waiting for the rest of whatever she was going to say. I knew an apology was coming, or at least some version of one, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother," she continued, her voice cracking just a little. "We were just trying to help them, and I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you. That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit it, at least not so soon. For a second, I thought maybe she was finally getting it, that I wasn't the villain in this situation. But I still couldn't shake off the frustration from how everything had gone down. "You didn't just ignore what I wanted," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You sided with them every single time. Like you just assumed I'd roll over and let them take whatever they wanted." "I know," she said, almost in a whisper. "But we thought, well, you've always been the strong one. Jake, he's never had it easy." That was her excuse every time. Jake wasn't strong. Jake had struggled more. Jake needed more support. It was like they didn't think I had any limits because I was the one who had my life together. "And you think I've had it easy?" I asked, my anger simmering just below the surface. "I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I pay for the groceries. I've been carrying all of you, and you think I can just keep doing that forever?" She looked down at her coffee, not saying anything for a few seconds. I know you've done a lot more than we could have asked for, but Jake, with the baby on the way. I cut her off. This isn't about the baby. This is about respect, and you guys haven't shown me any. She sighed, clearly exhausted by the whole situation, but I wasn't about to let her off with a few tired excuses. You know, we just thought we were doing the right thing, she finally said. Jake and Emma, they don't have much. And whose fault is that? I shot back. I didn't ask them to move in. I didn't ask for any of this. They need to figure out their own lives, and you can't keep bailing them out by throwing me under the bus. She nodded, finally seeming to understand, or at least trying to. We'll figure something out, she said, her voice quieter now. But please don't push us out. Not like this. I sat back in my chair, trying to calm down. It wasn't like I wanted to kick them out. I mean, they were my parents. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living in a situation where they didn't respect my boundaries. I'd let too much slide, and now I had to put my foot down. I don't want to push you out, I said, trying to be as calm as I could. But things need to change. I can't keep living like this, being treated like I don't matter in my own house. Either things change or yeah, you'll have to find somewhere else to live. She didn't argue, just nodded quietly. Okay, she said, we'll figure something out. After that, she left the kitchen, and I was alone again with my thoughts. I wasn't sure if anything was actually going to change, but at least, it seemed like they were finally starting to take me seriously. Jake and Emma hadn't shown their faces yet, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but either way, they were on borrowed time. Later that afternoon, Jake finally showed up, and of course, he looked like he'd been brooding over what had happened the night before. He didn't even say hi when he walked into the living room. Just sat down across from me with that same pissed-off expression he always had when he didn't get his way. So, this is how it's going to be? He asked, his voice dripping with bitterness. You're really going to kick us out? I gave you 24 hours, I said, not even looking up from my phone. If you're still here tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake scoffed, shaking his head like I was the bad guy. We're family. Yeah, and family doesn't take advantage of each other, I shot back. You've had weeks to figure this out. I'm not your fallback plan. He didn't have much to say after that, just sat there for a few minutes before getting up and storming off again. Typical Jake. He was always the type to run when things didn't go his way, and this time was no different. The rest of the day went by quietly, too quietly if I'm being honest. I didn't know what Jake and Emma were going to do, but I wasn't about to change my mind. I'd given them a clear deadline, and they knew I wasn't bluffing. The next 24 hours were going to decide everything. The next morning, after all the chaos, I woke up and just lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. I knew today was the day. Jake and Emma had 24 hours, and now that deadline was ticking away. It was weird, though. I wasn't even mad anymore. I'd already accepted what had to happen, and at this point, it was more about following through. When I got up and headed into the kitchen, I noticed right away that the house felt different. Not tense exactly, but just quiet, like the calm before something big happens. No one was in the kitchen, so I figured I'd make myself some breakfast. The fridge was still kind of empty from the last raid Jake and Emma had on the groceries, but I made do with what was left. As I sat there eating, I started thinking about how this whole situation had spiraled out of control so fast. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that things were fine. My parents and I were getting along. I was working, paying the mortgage, covering the groceries, and life was just kind of moving along like normal. Then Jake and Emma show up, and everything went off the rails. It's crazy how fast things can change when people start feeling entitled to stuff they didn't earn. A couple of hours later, I heard someone coming down the hallway. It was my dad. He walked in quietly, grabbed a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table across from me. He didn't say anything at first, just took a sip and looked out the window. Finally, he spoke. Jake and Emma are leaving today. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if he was telling me because they had decided to leave on their own or if he was just reminding me of the deadline. Either way, I nodded and kept eating. They don't have anywhere to go, he continued, his voice low. They're going to stay at a motel for a while until they figure things out. I stopped mid-bite and looked at him. Part of me felt bad, but the bigger part of me knew this was what had to happen. I'd been too nice for too long, and if I didn't put my foot down now, they'd just keep taking advantage. I gave them time, I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want it to come to this, but they left me no choice. He didn't argue, didn't try to guilt-trip me, which was surprising. He just nodded and kept drinking his coffee. I think he finally understood that I wasn't going to back down this time. After everything that had happened, There was no going back to how things were. Around noon, Jake and Emma started packing their things. I stayed in my room for most of it, not wanting to get into another argument or hear any more passive-aggressive comments. But after a while, I could hear Jake's voice getting louder from down the hall, so I knew it was only a matter of time before something went down. Sure enough, not long after, Jake knocked on my door. I opened it, and he stood there with that same pissed-off look he'd had since I gave him the eviction notice. "You're really going to let this happen?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You're just going to kick us out like this?" "I gave you 24 hours, I said, leaning against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head, his jaw clenched. "We're family, man. You don't do this to family." I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. Family doesn't take advantage of each other. "I'm not just kicking you out for no reason. You've been freeloading here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying the mortgage, the groceries, everything. And instead of being grateful, you tried to take my room and push me out of my own house. I'm not going to let that happen." Jake didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could tell he was mad, but there was nothing left for him to argue. He knew I was right, even if he didn't want to admit it. "So that's it, huh?" he finally muttered. "You're just throwing us out." "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday," I replied. "You can find a way to live somewhere else, or you can stay in the guest room and actually respect me in my space. But if you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." Jake glared at me, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door and let out a long breath. It was exhausting, but I knew it had to be done. By mid-afternoon, Jake and Emma were gone. I didn't see them leave, and honestly, I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for some emotional goodbye or anything like that. They packed up their stuff, loaded it into their car, and drove off without saying a word to me. The house felt different after they left. Quieter, less tense. My parents didn't say much to me that day. I think they were still processing everything that had happened. My mom looked upset, but she didn't say anything about it. Maybe she finally realized that I wasn't the one who had caused all this. Jake and Emma had pushed me too far, and this was the result. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in, sat down on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a while. I could tell she was trying to find the right words. "They're gone," she said softly. I nodded, not saying anything. "I never thought it would get to this point," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her, feeling some of the frustration lift a little. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I explained, "but you guys treated me like I didn't matter, like my needs and my space weren't important." She sighed and nodded. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." We sat in silence for a few minutes. I could tell she was upset, but at least now she was starting to understand where I was coming from. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said, breaking the silence. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded again, standing up slowly. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Things will be different, I promise." As she left the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation with Jake and Emma was over, but there was still work to be done with my parents. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but at least now it felt like they were willing to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The house was quiet, and the tension that had been hanging in the air was gone. It wasn't a perfect solution, but at least now I had my space back.